Okay, so I thought we'd try a simple ratio problem and see how we can go about answering this. Now, the question tells us if Paul and Harry earn £50 and divide the money in the ratio of 3 to 2, how much money does Harry receive? Now, the first thing we need to know is that Paul and Harry are written in that order. So the ratios are written in the same relationship. So Paul, because he's written first, is the first number in this ratio. Harry becomes second, so he's second in this ratio. So Paul receives 3 shares, Harry receives 2. Now if we were to divide the money equally, then Paul and Harry would receive £25 each. Now that would be a ratio of 1 to 1. Nice and simple. But they want to split the money in the ratio of 3 to 2. So this is just a question of shares. Paul receives 3 shares and Harry earns 2 shares. So for every £3 that Paul gets, Harry gets 2. Now we could count this out, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2 for Harry, then 1, 2, 3 to Paul, and 1, 2 to Harry, but this would take a long time. So there's a lot faster method of doing this. As I said, I mentioned the term shares. So Paul receives 3 shares, Harry receives 2 shares. So in total there are 5 shares. Now if I divide the number of shares into the amount of money that we're dealing with, that will tell me the value of 1 share. So 5 into 50, 5 into 5 goes once, 5 into 0, 0. So we get 10. Now that's the value of 1 share. Now if that's the value of 1 share, Paul has 3 shares. So Paul would receive 3 lots of £10, which would be £30. Harry would receive 2 shares, so he would get 2 lots of the £10, so he would get £20. So the question actually asks, how much does Harry receive? Now we know Harry receives £20, so this would be our actual answer. Even though we know Paul earns £30, remember we answered the question. So they want to know how much Harry receives, so Harry receives 20. But if we need to do a double check on this or prove that this works, then if I add the money that Harry and Paul each receive, then it should take me back to the original amount. Now we can see that 30 plus 20 does equal the £50 that they started with. So it's really quite simple. So let's change this just slightly and we'll change the ratio and we'll change the amount and we'll try again with a new number. So for example, let's say between them they earn £80 and they divide the money in the ratio of 5 to 3. Now we have £80. Paul will receive 5 shares, Harry will receive 3 shares, so we have 5 plus 3, so we have 8 shares in total. So if we divide 8 into 80, 8 into 8 goes once, 8 into 0 goes 0, so again, one share is worth £10. Now we could work out what everybody gets, but the question only asks how much does Harry receive. So we know Harry is the last number in the ratio, and he gets 3 shares. So 3 shares would be 3 times the £10, so Harry would receive £30. And that's it. That really is it. So we do have some questions for you on a worksheet, so if you want to work through those, remember, if you don't get it right, it's fine, you just made a basic mistake, go back, find out where it was, learn from the mistake, and then carry on. You'll be fine, just keep working at it.